We learned that cognitive agents maintain explicit representations of themselves and their environment, including other agents. Agents affect their environment through their actions and through their proactive behavior. Other agents are part of the environment, and an agent may intend to affect the actions of those other agents. The most common way to influence another agent's behavior is to use communication. One of the characteristics of cognitive agents is that they have some social ability, so they can interact with each other. What do we mean by communication, though? Communication refers to the exchange or transmission of information, signs, or signals between agents. Communication can be linguistic, extra-linguistic, or both together, as in the case of face-to-face human conversation. Here, we will focus on written linguistic communication through digital channels. For cognitive agents, the two main tools for communication are agent messages and agent communication protocols. Most commonly, cognitive agents communicate by sending each other written messages formulated using an agent communication language, or ACL. ACLs are grounded in theories of human communication, and there is a strong anthropomorphism in agent communication design. While in the case of machine-to-machine communication, this might not be necessary, agents and humans are meant to communicate in the context of human-computer interaction. In this context, it is useful that ACLs are modeled after human language. And eventually, modeling the agent communication languages after human languages might help us to model human-to-human communication, especially when this communication is mediated by computers. The main tool for communicating among cognitive agents is messages. Messages correspond to what we would intuitively think they are. A useful metaphor for agent messaging is email. Generally, agent messages are made up of a header that says where the message is coming from and to which agent or group of agents it is going to. Optionally, some information about the type of the message and the language in which its content is expressed. And finally, the content of the message. Of course, while in regular emails we use natural language to formulate the content of messages, most often the content of messages generated by agents contains content expressed in a formal language. Each message has a content, which can be empty, but which is expressed using a particular content language that has a given syntax. The agent may be able to make logical assertions using a logical language or express natural language sentences formed using a generative grammar. Whatever the case is, the content of the message is expressed in a language that usually has a well-defined semantics, so that the content has some meaning. The semantics of the propositional content of the message is often referential, as in semiotics, as agents tend to discuss concrete objects or facts. Messages have a referential denotational sense and possibly a connotational sense as well. The connotational sense is more contextual and more complex to formalize, and mostly left aside. In general, we say that a propositional content has a truth conditional semantics to express the fact that it is conditioned by its truth conditions. The meaning of a propositional content is what it takes or what it would take to make its content true. Let's take an example. For example, if I say, Philip went to Mars, you can all build in your mind the little scenario that takes for it to be the case. Philip denotes me, Mars denotes the planet, Mars, and going denotes the action of Philip moving from one place to another. Went means that it happened in the past. What is quite remarkable with truth conditional semantics is that you understood me even though you know that this assertion is false. The message has a content that has a semantics, but the message also has a type, and the type of the message also has its own semantics. Indeed, we do not use messages just to transmit content. We actually do things with them. So, for example, the same propositional content can be used differently in different types of messages. This is the idea that message or utterances are actions that are used to achieve intentions like any other action, and this idea is the idea of speech acts. Let's take the content Joe in room A at 2 p.m. we can use the same content for different type of speech act. We can make a statement, Joe was in room A at 2 p.m. An order, we can say to Joe, be in room A at 2 p.m. A promise, we can promise to another agent, Joe will be in room A at 2 p.m. Or a question, was Joe in room A at 2 p.m.? Or even a request, could Joe be in room A at 2 p.m.? These are different speech acts that share the same propositional content. Speech act theory is the base of modern approaches to human communication pragmatics. It is also the underlying approach to agent languages for modeling the different types of agents that exist in a given agent communication language. Speech act theory is the result of a long tradition in analytical philosophy of language, starting with Wittgenstein in the middle of the 20th century, going through Grice, Austin, Searle, and Verdewecken. In speech act theory, utterances are treated like physical actions that aim to change the state of the world, often by changing the mental state of other agents. Like other actions, speech acts are intentional in that they are produced as part of plans to achieve the agent's goal or intention. Speech act theory tells us how many types of messages we need to consider. There are 5 basic types of speech acts. There are assertive speech acts, in which the speaker expresses their world representation by informing someone, asserting a fact, and so forth. There are directive speech acts, in which the speaker commits others by giving orders, asking questions, or making requests with various degrees of intensity for each subtype of this speech act. There are commissive speech acts, in which the speaker commits themselves, for example, by making a promise. There are expressive speech acts, in which the speaker expresses their feelings, like in a love declaration. And finally, there are declarative speech acts, in which the speaker acts on the context by the very utterance of the speech act. For example, if the speaker is in the right role to do so, they can fire you by saying that you are fired. Or a priest can bless you, or the mayor of a city can declare 2 people married. Particular agents in particular roles can perform declarative speech acts that directly change the world. In fact, those 5 types of basic speech acts cover the 4 possible directions of fit that actions denote in the field of analytical philosophy. The direction of fit from the words to the world applies to assertive speech acts, where the agent makes utterances such that the words fit the state of the world. The direction of fit from the world to the words describes directive or commissive speech acts, where there is a commitment into having something changing in the world for the words to become the case. The double direction of fit describes declarative speech acts that make the world and the word match as the act occurs. And the empty direction of fit, with expressive speech acts in which the world and the words are presumed to already match. For each speech act, in addition, there are 4 dimensions that may be distinguished when it comes to the semantics of speech acts. There is the utterance act, which is just the physical utterance of the message by the speaker. It can be a text, an email, a function call, or a sound produced by a text-to-speech system. You have the locutionary act, in which the expression and perception of a propositional content is manifested. So, for example, I can make an utterance with the content "it's raining," "es regnet," or "il pleut." These are the same propositional content, but it is expressed in different syntax or in different languages, in this case, English, German, and French. There is the illocutionary act that refers to the inference of the intended interpretation of the utterance. For example, with the utterance, "Can you pass me the salt?" The type of speech act and the content of the speech act are not enough to understand what the underlying intention of the locutor was, if any. Finally, the perlocutionary act is related to whether or not expected result of an utterance is achieved. If I said to you, "Can you pass me the salt?" the interpretation should be that I have the intention that you do some sort of movement to grab the salt and move it my way. So I expect that you would change your mental state so that if you are cooperative, you will make a plan to achieve the intention that you adopted from my communication and eventually pass me the salt. What we can see here is that speech acts are not, unlike propositional content, true or false. They are judged as succeeding or failing. We judge a speech act to be successful when its utterance, locutionary act, and illocutionary act are all successful. In other words, you receive my message, "Can you pass me the salt?" You understand its propositional content, you know what salt is, you know what passing is, and you understand the illocutionary act. You understand that I would like you not to answer by yes or no to this closed question, but to actually move the salt in my direction. If these three actions are successful, then the speech act is successful. And then you have the felicity condition of the speech act, which has to do with whether the percussionary act is successful or not. For example, if you end up on top of all that to actually pass me the salt, then my felicity condition on the speech act is met. And if you just leave the table and walk away instead of passing me the salt, then it is not met. Speech act theory is very systematic when it comes to natural languages. Illocutionary points can be identified according to performative verbs, and classifications have been produced in over 20 different languages. Everything you say can be seen and represented as a speech act. An implicit performative can be rephrased with explicit ones. For example, if I say Justin Trudeau is the Prime Minister, I state or assert that Trudeau is the Prime Minister. It's an assertive speech act. If I say I'll be there, I am making a promise. It is a commissive speech act. If I say drop by if you're ever in the neighborhood, I invite you, it's a directive, although it does not have the degree of intensity of an order, but more so of an invitation. If I say I feel great, I express that I feel good. It's an expressive speech act. If I say the festival is open, it's a declarative speech act. And if I am the director of the festival, then it's on. So speech act theory is a powerful framework for modeling both human and agent communication. Part of this power lies in the possibility of creating complex speech acts. A complex speech act might contain iterated and embedded content. For example, in the statement, he promised to do his best, I assert that a promise has been made. Or speech acts can be composed. The sentence, he promised to do his best and he left, composes two speech acts. Agent communication languages propose standard formats for exchanging messages between cognitive agents. They are based on the speech act theory that we just discussed. The best known agent communication languages are KQML, developed by DARPA, and FIPA-ACL, from the Foundation for Intelligent Physical Agents. Both define the messages types and the messages format. They leave the choice of the content language open, a little bit like an email system does not tell you what language you have to write in your emails. This is, for example, a list of all the performative that are the message types in FIPA-ACL. You can recognize here some of the basic speech acts: inform, agree, refuse, request, query, as well as another set of more specialized performatives. You can see that all the different types of speech acts are covered by these messages types. It covers enough speech acts to build very rich conversations. Notice the not understood performative, which allows agents to negotiate which language they speak by trying several, or at least to inform other agents that they do not understand the message that their language is written in. This is particularly useful in heterogeneous multi-agent systems, in which not all the agents are alike. They may not have the same developers, and they might send messages that are not mutually understood. A particular type of such multi-agent system are open multi-agent systems. A multi-agent system is considered open when agents can come in and go out of the systems pretty much at any time, so that the set of agents that make up the system changes over time. Each message type has a precise semantics. We talk about the notion of semantics that allow agents to reason about communication. Here we're not talking about the semantics of the content of the message. but the semantic of the message type itself. For example, here are the semantics for a request where a sender S requests to hearer H to achieve some action phi. Like any action, the request can be specified in terms of preconditions and postconditions. The preconditions indicate what has to be the case before the message can be sent. Often, preconditions actually serve as triggers for the agents to decide to send the message. So if a sender believes that the hearer can do the action, because you would not ask someone to do something unless you think they can do it, and if the sender believes that the hearer believes that he can do it, so you ask someone and they themselves believe they can do it, and the sender believes that the sender wants as the goal that phi gets achieved, and possibly also that the sender believes that the sender cannot achieve this action himself, then those are the preconditions for making the request. The postcondition would be that the hearer believes that the sender believes that he wants the goal that phi be achieved. And then eventually, if the hearer is cooperative, he might decide to adopt this particular intention. So when two cognitive agents or BDI agents communicate concretely, it looks as is depicted in this graphic. Let's use as an example an agent A at the top here that doesn't know what time it is. It believes that it doesn't know what time it is. It desires to know the time. Then it adopts the intention to get the time. It may then make a plan with a sequence of action to get the time. One possible plan is to look at your wrist and see if you have a watch. If you don't have a watch, another plan is to search for a clock. If there's no clock around, yet another plan is to ask someone for the time. And maybe that's where the intention becomes a communicative intention. It's encoded into a speech act, and then eventually, I ask the other agents, do you know what time it is? Which would be formulated as a request. The speech act may be received by agent B, provided that the speech act is correctly understood and processed, then the intention behind the speech act would be recognized, and agent B will start believing that agent A wants to know what time it is. And then, if B is nice enough, it will adopt the intention to give agent A the time. In which case, agent B will formulate a plan and find maybe that the best way to do so is to formulate a speech act, which is an assertion by which it gives the information to agent A. The content of the message would be agent B saying what time it is to agent A. And possibly the conversation can continue between those two agents. So that's what two artificial agents talking to each other looks like in theory. In practice, it takes some very sophisticated agents to use an agent communication language like FIPA-ACL in an unrestricted manner. Often, agents' conversations are structured using conversation templates that we call communication protocols. Protocols help to structure agent conversations, and there are a wide variety of them. Sometimes we call them dialogue games. For example, a simple request protocol could be agent A sends a request P to B. B has to answer the request by yes or no. If the answer is yes, then agent B is committed towards agent A to achieve the task P, and if the answer is no, not. Protocols simplify the design of agent communication by reducing the number of possible continuations in the conversation. There are a wide variety of communication protocols. In negotiation protocols, for example, we find bargaining and interest-based negotiation protocols. There are also argumentation protocols for when agents disagree on some facts that allow them to try to reason about the cause behind those facts or beliefs. Auctions are another type of communication protocol that is often used in multi-agent systems. Protocols can be sequenced or nested into each other to form more complex conversations. For example, an agent could make a request to another agent that could then write back and ask for additional information about the request before answering it. Protocols are structured ways to encode a type of conversation. They are often formalized as finite state machines, with states and transitions. and often with an initial and final state. They really simplify computation by restricting the agent to a limited set of possible messages at any given point. Protocols also have a built-in turn-taking mechanism that directs who talks when. Protocols capture the conventional aspect of conversation, that is, the pragmatic dimension of language. This concludes our overview of message-based agent communication. We will see in the next session that other types of agent communication are possible. We will look at communication that do not rely on messages and that occur through the environment.